Hello, friends. Welcome back to some science. We have been talking about our Earth, the history of our Earth, what's inside of it, what's on top of it. So we're going to continue talking about that. So we talked yesterday in our lesson about our beautiful Earth. What do we call this blue stuff here? The water that surrounds our Earth is the ocean, and the land is called continent. So we've been talking about how our land is covered mostly with rocks, and geologists like Gary study the rocks on our Earth. So we're going to continue to look today about Earth. Now, before we start, remember, what is the northernmost tip called? The North Pole. See, maybe we can find Santa Claus up there. The southernmost tip is called the South Pole. Remember, we had that imaginary line that runs all the way around the middle of the Earth and it gets warmer around there. It's called the equator. And what were the three most important words that geologist Gary wanted us to remember when we learn about geology? Remember, we had heat, pressure, and time. Okay, so today we're going to talk about, ready, so I can read along with us about Gary the geologist. Today we're going to learn about the inside of the Earth. So yesterday we talked about the outside of the Earth. Today we're going to talk about the inside of the Earth. So are you guys ready to learn? Let's go. All right, let's share my screen here. Oh, wrong thing. There we go. All righty. Now, before we get started with our lesson, we got to learn some words. Here are vocabulary words. These are words that we might know, might see, might not know. So let's go over them. Core. Core is the center of the Earth. Here's the core. It is impossible to journey to the Earth's core because it is too hot for humans. Crust. Here's the crust, that little gray area right there. That's your crust. The hard, thick outer grain of the Earth. The workers drilled a few inches into the Earth's crust. Eroded, worn away. The writing on the Sphinx had been eroded by the wind and sand. Here you can see where some of the rock had been eroded. A part that lies over or under another. The baker added a thin layer of chocolate to the cake. See here, you can look at the different layers in the chocolate cake. Mantle. Here's your mantle. The layer of the Earth between the crust and the mantle is the layer beneath the Earth's crust. All right, so let's begin. Hello, Gary the geologist. Again, I woke up this morning and started digging this hole in the ground. Each time I pushed my shovel into the earth, I bring up a load of soil, and I've noticed that each load of soil has a few rocks in it. I'm digging this hole today to teach you about the outer layer of the earth. So the earth has layers. It's kind of like if you think about a bed and how the bed has blankets on it, and we can blankets are the layers. So you have a layer that has the sheet, and then you have like a carpet. Some people might even have another blanket on top. So there's different layers, okay? Beneath your backyard, the sidewalk, the school, actually, beneath most every place people live, there's soil, which is sometimes called dirt. So dirt is displaced soil. It's soil that has moved from where it originally began, okay? Different types of soil appear in the Earth's layers. Each layer of soil is made up of different things, which can give it different color or a different texture. And texture is the way something feels. Thickness of the soil varies or is different depending on where you live. In some places on the Earth, the soil is several feet thick. So like it could be like this, or it could be like this, or it could be even like this. All right, in other places on the Earth, it's just a few inches. And in some places on the Earth, there's no soil at all. Here, where I live, the soil is rich and dark near the surface. However, as I get deeper into the Earth, I can see a definite color change. The color in this soil has changed from dark brown to bright red. The color change means I have reached a layer of reddish clay. It's getting a little harder to dig now, so I'll have to use my pickaxe. So you can see the dirt down here, and then if you look below it, there's the bright red. That's the clay he's talking about. Clank! My pick just hit something really hard below the red clay. The further down I go, the harder the clay becomes. Pretty soon, I will hit bedrock, a solid layer of hard rock that I won't be able to dig through with my shovel. So here you can see the regular dark soil, here's the red clay, and you keep going down further and further, and there he is, he's standing on the bedrock. I dug this hole to show you that there are different layers of soil and rock beneath your feet. The further you go into the earth, the more things change. The dark soil on top is fairly easy to dig into with a shovel, but the deeper layer of clay is harder to dig because it has been compacted or squished by the weight of or pressure of everything above it. Now, pressure was one of the key things that he wanted us to remember. Remember, pressure is when pushing on the top layer, and it makes it harder and harder. So can't dig very hard because it's all compacted together. This diagram shows you what the inside of the earth would look like if you could cut it open or cut out a big chunk of it. The crust is the outermost layer of the earth, represented here by a thin brown line. So if you look right up here, that's the thin brown line. That is the earth's crust. See it all the way around? I've been digging into the very outermost portion of the crust today. Most of the earth is rock, and most of that rock is beneath the crust in the other three layers. The mantle, which is the red part, this is your mantle. The outer core, which is the orange, and the inner core, which is the yellow. The distance from the surface, where you and I live, all the way to the middle of the inner core is nearly 4,000 miles. This is one thick planet. Now, if you think about it, we look on our map here. Let me get my globe. If I go from California all the way over here to New York, that's 1,000 miles. So it would take 4 trips across the United States to get all the way to the inner core from the crust. That's pretty thick. I will teach you more about the mantle, outer core, and inner core next time. For now, let's focus on the thinnest layer, the crust. The Earth's crust is between 3 and 20 miles, depending on where you live on the Earth. So 3 miles would be, I guess it would be like going down from here at the school would be like going down toward the end of the highway for us. I'm not sure where you guys are, that would be 3 miles. But 20 miles would be like for me to drive from here going into Knoxville. So that's pretty far away. Most people, plants, and animals live on the surface or outermost edge of the crust. Remember, the Earth's surface is covered by oceans and continents. Everything alive on Earth lives in or on or above these oceans and continents on the crust. For example, you and your dog live on the crust. Worms and moles, on the other hand, live underground or in the crust. Here you can see worms and bugs and a mole. They all live inside the dirt or the crust, and we live up on top of it. Birds fly above the crust, and fish swim in the water that is flowing on the crust. The crust is where geologists like me look to learn about the history of the Earth. In the crust, we find different layers of rock, which teach us about different periods of time in the Earth's history. Remember, Earth is over 4,500,000,000 years old. As one old lady. Each layer of rock was formed during a period of time in the Earth's history, so we can study each layer to learn more about each period of time. Geologists search the crust for clues about the history of the Earth. I already introduced you to this place called the Grand Canyon. Here, the geology of the Earth's crust sits like an open book waiting to be read. Layer upon layer of different rock tells the geologist when this place was covered with a cool ocean and when it was not. So you can look and see all the different layers just by looking at it. Pretty neat, huh? Geological or earth changes can do all sorts of tricky things to the rocks on the Earth's crust. These formations in Arches National Park in the state of Utah show what thousands of years of wind, rain, and ice can do to this type of stone. So all the time, all these thousands of years, anytime it rains or gets windy, it chips away a little bit at a time, and that's what forms. You have different formations. Some rocks are mysterious. This is called the, Uluru or Aries rock. It's the only tall thing in an otherwise flat, barren grassland in the middle of Australia. Geologists have figured out that this is a remnant left over from a time when the entire surface there was covered in this type of rock. A remnant means that something that's left over or remaining. Eventually, all the other rock eroded away due to the wind and rain, and only this one mound of rock remained. So that means all the other rocks were withered away or worn away from the wind and the rain. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. Different places tell different stories. Not all interesting rocks are above ground. This photo was taken down in a cave, which is a large hole or space underground. A cave is basically an area in the Earth's crust that has been hollowed out for one reason or another, usually as a result of underground water flowing in and dissolving the rock over millions of years. Caves are really amazing places to explore. People usually do not think too much about what is happening underground, deep below our feet, but the fact is that what happens deep underground has everything to do with what we see in the world around us. Next time, we will take a closer look at what's happening in those other layers. I better go ahead and fill in this hole now. See you next time. All right, friends. Now that we have learned about our crust of the Earth, let's answer some questions, okay? All right, let's see here. Was Gary digging in the crust, the mantle, or the core? The crust, good. On which layer of the Earth do we live? We live on the crust. What kinds of things are found in the crust of the Earth? We found soil, rocks, small animals are found in the crust of the Earth, worms, little bugs, roots of plants. Why do geologists study the layers of rock in the Earth's crust? So they can learn about different times of our Earth's history. All right, guys, one question. What is the inside of the Earth? We have lots of layers and lots of different rocks. So you are going to have some questions in your Google Classroom today to answer based on what we learned today. Once you finish that, turn it in to me, and we will talk about what we're going to do in our next lesson. Remember, Gary the geologist told us we're going to start going inside the Earth to learn about the other layers of the Earth. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye, friends.